Columbus is one of the safest cities in the state of Ohio. It avoided becoming part of the Rust Belt due to its more diversified economy, and as a result has avoided many of the problems associated with industrial decline. Boarded-up buildings and run-down factories are not overly common sights in the city of Columbus, and it has enjoyed steady population growth over the years. Likewise, the opioid epidemic, which has ravaged many parts of the Midwest, has seemingly been kept mostly at bay in Columbus. While Columbus has fared well, especially in comparison to many of its Midwestern peers, like any city, it has its issues with crime, and certain parts of Columbus are less safe than others. One of those areas where locals tend to avoid being alone at night is the part of town to the south of downtown. Nestled between downtown and the industrial area, the area is known as Hungarian Village, and it lies ever so slightly out of reach of recent gentrification efforts in downtown Columbus. Local forums will tell you that this area is slowly improving, yet you should still take caution when visiting or looking for a place to live. To quote a presumed local on Reddit, who has a blunt and cynical outlook, quote, "Hungarian Village is great if you're in the market for heroin or prostitutes." Hi, I'm your host, Zach Williams. Welcome to Compulsion. It was here, Hungarian Village, out of reach of gentrification, that 3-year-old Aaron Cody Stepp was living with his aunt, Mickey. Their house sat at 214 Hossack Street. Hossack Street is between Parsons Avenue, a notoriously dangerous street, and an abandoned cement factory off of South High Street. While Columbus generally has avoided industrial decline and the opioid crisis, it is clear in Hungarian Village that the less fortunate areas of the city struggle with the effects of both. Cody, who preferred to go by his middle name, had been living with his aunt since January of 1994, and Mickey had legal custody of him since December of 1996. His mother, Robin, had lost custody of him because she was in and out of jail. Robin struggled with addiction, occasionally worked as a prostitute, and had a history of petty theft and armed robbery charges. Robin had never been abusive towards Cody, but according to the Columbus Dispatch, she, quote, had not paid much attention to him. On March 11th, around 7 p.m., Mickey decided to take a trip to the corner store to buy a bag of chips while Cody was playing in the adjacent yard of 220 Hossack Street. The family had, until recently, lived in the house next door, and it was currently vacant, so Cody wasn't disturbing anyone by playing in the yard. Mickey's mother, Janice Stiles, lived with Cody and Mickey as well, and when Mickey left to go to the store, the two had some kind of miscommunication. Mickey thought that Janice was going to watch Cody in the yard, while Janice thought that Mickey was taking him to the store with her. Mickey was gone for less than half an hour, but by the time she got back to the house, Cody was gone. Mickey and Janice reported Cody missing, and perhaps coincidentally, Robin was scheduled to get out of prison the following morning. She was released at approximately 8:30 a.m. and had been in for 17 months on theft charges. She hadn't seen Cody in over a year and was crushed to hear that he was gone. She was also somewhat suspicious of Mickey and Janice's story right off the bat. One of her friend's sons, James Taylor, took her to Mickey's house right away. He later told the police that Mickey and Robin had quickly gotten into an argument. The next day, on March 12th, Columbus police thought they had solved the case rather quickly, when a young boy about Cody's age and matching his description was seen wandering around near Ohio State's campus. However, when they picked the boy up, it was not Cody, and they brought him to social services to find his family. The search for Cody continued with helicopters circling the city and canine officers assisting in checking nearby fields and wooded areas. The FBI joined in right away, and CPD pulled out all the stops in the search. They brought in all available patrol officers, detectives, and even recruits to help. They went door to door to interview everyone in the neighborhood, handed out flyers, and checked alleyways, while a team of nearly 100 officers combed through the vast wooded area running along the nearby Scioto River. Though police initially told the media they were treating the case as an abduction, within the first few days they told reporters they hadn't ruled out the possibility that Cody was missing as a result of a family dispute between Robin and Mickey, quickly connecting the dots that it was a bit odd he had vanished right before Robin might get him back. On March 13, 1997, the Columbus Dispatch reported that a neighbor had seen Mickey and Janice removing items from their backyard shed at around 6:45 p.m., but they had not seen Cody outside at all. This was at most 15 minutes before Mickey said he was outside. Other neighbors pointed out that this wasn't the best neighborhood, and it would have been a bit odd for him to be playing outside in a neighbor's lawn because of the large amount of drug dealers and prostitutes who wandered the streets. On March 15th, Robin was back in jail after soliciting an undercover officer with the offer of prostitution at around 7:30 in the morning, just blocks away from Mickey's residence on Hossack Street. Later articles gradually lowered the amount she had offered to sleep with the officer for, perhaps in a bid to further sensationalize the story, even though the only paper that covered the story in the first few days was the Columbus Dispatch. The judge granted Robin a low bail amount, but her charges were complicated by the fact that she had already had arrests in relation to prostitution that had not yet been brought to court. Police emphasized to the media that her arrests didn't have anything to do with the case or the search, and Lieutenant David Murray said that all leads so far had been dead ends. He clarified that even though police were looking at the possibility of a family abduction, the Stepp family had been very cooperative in the search. March 19th brought about another search of the property next to where Cody had been staying with his aunt. Police had apparently searched the shed the night of the abduction, but needed to obtain a warrant to go back and search it more thoroughly, since that house was now vacant. Detective Steve Murray told the Dispatch that, quote, "We just wanted to recheck the shed to make sure the little boy wasn't in there." Steve Murray was quickly becoming the voice of the case to the media, and once again said they didn't have anything they could point to or rule out. He said, quote, "Leads continue to come in and take us in every possible direction, and we follow them all up. But we can't say we have enough leads in any one direction to exclude any other directions. It's frustrating. We want to find him, but this is the nature of investigations. You look until you find him. You have to stay calm, focused, and moving. You don't want to get too frustrated or too eager because you don't want to miss anything." The case went silent for a month, only making it into the papers again on April 19th to update the public on Robin's prostitution charges. She pleaded not guilty. The case went cold once again, this time until August, when America's Most Wanted aired the story. Local police took the opportunity to ask the public for help, saying that it wasn't too late to come forward. Detective Mark Annan said, quote, "There has to be people out there who were initially afraid to call us, and maybe they thought we would find him, but time has passed, and that hasn't happened. We need their help, and we're asking them to call us. They can call anonymously." He said that the police had received numerous calls lately about another boy abducted by the name of Cody, but reassured the public that this was a coincidence, and that boys named Cody were not being targeted for abductions. The police had searched 3 houses in town based off of local tips, but none of them had panned out. Apparently these tips pointed to Cody being deceased, because Annan said that he thought it was fortunate they didn't find him in any of those locations. The Dispatch called Robin, who was currently incarcerated, to ask her what she thought, and she told them that, quote, "I think a family member or a friend of the family has my son." She went so far as to speculate that he'd been taken across state lines. She said that her family had made complaints about her to Children's Services and didn't think she was a fit mother for Cody. She told the Dispatch that, quote, "I love my son more than anything in the world, and I want him back. Cody was the best gift I ever got in my life. I want him to know that Mommy loves him and misses him, and I want him home." She also said she was taking classes in jail to help her from falling back into addiction, and when she got out in the fall, she planned on focusing on finding her son. On July 12th of 1997, a witness reportedly spotted a child matching Cody's description at a restaurant in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania. He was with 2 other children and 2 adult women. One woman was white, around 30 or 40 years old, with medium-length brown hair. The other was Asian, with short dark hair, and in her teens or perhaps early 20s. The women and children have not been identified, and if the sighting was indeed Cody, nothing ever came of it. By this time, Cody had been gone for months, and police were strongly considering that Mickey had given him to another relative to keep him away from Robin, as she thought she was an unfit mother. While emotionally devastating and obviously illegal, this could have meant Cody was alive and being cared for. However, a closer examination of Mickey Stepp and Janice Stiles brought much more disturbing possibilities to light. With more neighbors talking to police, it became clear that they hadn't actually seen Cody in months. The last confirmed sighting was in May of 1996. When police searched Mickey's home, they found only a few child's clothing items and no toys or pictures, or really any evidence to show that he had actually been living there. However, Cody had been at a doctor's appointment a few weeks prior to get some vaccinations, so police double-checked that to make sure he had actually been spotted. What they found out was that Mickey had brought a neighbor's kid over for the night under the guise of having a sleepover with Cody, and had taken that child in to pass off as Cody at the appointment the next morning. This all points to Cody being gone long before Robin came back to get him, and she hadn't even seen him since December of 1995, well over a year before he supposedly vanished. When she talked to Mickey or Janice over the phone, they would say that Cody was busy or with a friend and couldn't speak with her. Neighbors and friends recalled that any time they were in the Stepp household, Mickey would always say that Cody was at a friend's house or playing in the back room. Still, there could be hope that Mickey simply gave him away to a relative, and Robin told police they had family in West Virginia and Kentucky. On March 1st of 1998, Columbus police told the media that they believed Cody could very well be dead. They said Mickey had failed 2 lie detector tests, Janice refused to take one, and both women had stopped cooperating with law enforcement altogether. Robin, on the other hand, had passed a lie detector test. However, it is important to note that polygraphs are not very accurate, and often just serve to sway public opinion for or against the suspect. Despite her extensive criminal record, police were always supportive of Robin in the media. Mark Annan said, quote, "This is a mother who wants her child back. She has shown the concern a parent would have with a missing child, and she has helped us as much with the investigation as she can." The police never brought up her charges or time served, and only commented on it when the media made a sensation of it, as CPD tried to keep the focus on finding Cody. As police kept digging, they found more possible evidence against Mickey and Janice. Jim McCoskey, one of the leads on the case, told the Columbus Dispatch that Janice may have had a history of child abuse. Stiles had had a child pass away in 1964. Her youngest daughter, Tenny, had died at the age of 3 from pneumonia caused by bronchitis. However, an autopsy of her body showed that she was covered in burns in various stages of healing, meaning the burns did not all happen at once. An unnamed female relative told McCoskey that when she was young, Janice would place Tenny on the hot stove as a punishment for when she had accidents during potty training. McCoskey said, quote, "Tenny was also placed on a potty for 8 to 10 hours at a time." This relative also told police that before she died, Tenny was sick in bed for days before she was brought in for medical treatment. Stiles was never charged with murder or neglect in regards to Tenny, and officers today are not sure why. McCoskey and Annan were becoming less and less hopeful that Cody would be found alive, but they did their best to keep his story in the media, checking in every now and then for updates. Annan told the media that they believed the public had answers, and told the Dispatch, quote, "Someone out there knows what has happened to Cody. It's coming up on a year, and we're asking for the public's help. Calls can be made anonymously." In the spring of 1998, Robin began filing paperwork to have Cody declared legally dead. Robin was trying to prove that Cody had been exposed to the peril of death, a specific type of ruling typically used for boat and plane accidents where a body could not possibly be recovered. The media was quick to assume this was in order to file a wrongful death suit against Mickey. Though Cody did not have a life insurance policy, and Robin had not attempted to recover any financial compensation. This was reported on specifically in the Columbus Dispatch, and it's possible this was just the Dispatch speculating that she was trying to get money from the case, as they tended to portray her in a negative light. On August 24th of 1998, Robin went before the probate court with her lawyer, Michael Moore. Judge Lawrence Belks quickly ruled that the witness testimony was largely speculation and said, quote, "At this point, we don't know if the child is missing, sold for ransom, or murdered, or fell down a sewer drain." He ruled that there was not enough evidence to declare Cody dead, but after the ruling, he had the witnesses come forward and testify about what they knew, so the transcript from the witnesses who were already present could be used in any appeals down the line. The hearing lasted another 4 hours, while 12 witnesses testified on the case. Columbus police testified that they had reason to believe that Cody may have died, but had to admit that they had no evidence to back up that idea. Mickey said she felt responsible for Cody's disappearance, but maintained that she had been trying to find him ever since. However, she told the court that when he vanished, Cody was wearing a jogging suit in 28-degree weather, and didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with that. Moore brought up the possibility that Janice and Mickey had conspired to get rid of Cody in order to collect and spend the $279 welfare checks they had been receiving for him. They both denied this, and maintained that Cody had been in the home up until he had vanished. Moore brought up Tenny Stepp, and Janice denied ever abusing her children, but her daughter, Diane Carls, took the stand to refute this. Diane said that Janice had tortured Tenny before her death and was abusive to the other children. She said that Janice, quote, had a temper. She'd pick up whatever was close and throw it at you. Diane told the court that Janice had once beaten her unconscious. They called the nurse who had supposedly given Cody his shots weeks prior to his disappearance, and she testified that she had since been introduced to a boy who was the son of Mickey's friend, Rebecca Hunt, and was about 80% sure that this had been the boy Mickey brought in disguised as Cody. Lastly, Robin told the jury she had not seen or spoken to her son since December of 1995, and it was very possible Cody had been missing a majority of the time she was incarcerated. Because the last confirmed sighting of him was in May of 1996, and that was the year Mickey had gotten formal custody of him, it's possible he vanished very shortly after she succeeded in becoming his guardian. Though evidence does point to Cody having been gone from the house for quite some time, it's important to note that later articles will say there was absolutely no children's clothing found in the house, while initial reports simply say there was very little. The fact that neither Robin nor Janice saw a problem with Cody playing in a neighbor's yard in below freezing weather with simply a light jacket to keep him warm does open up the possibility that Cody had indeed been there but was simply just not being taken care of. The lack of toys and pictures don't necessarily mean he was already gone. Perhaps they just didn't buy him any toys or see fit to hang any pictures or buy him new clothes. On June 24th of 1999, Robin appealed the court's decision. During this trial, it was revealed that Janice had at one point admitted to being in 220 Hossack Street while Mickey was at the corner store, before she went back to their house, meaning that if Cody had been playing in the yard, she would have noticed him, and would have noticed that Mickey was gone when she went back to 214 Hossack Street. This seems to put holes in Janice's story, but proving that the opposition was unreliable would not necessarily sway the judge. The ruling that they had chosen to pursue was not normally granted to people who had been gone for less than 5 years, or who weren't part of an accident in which there were no survivors. But if they could prove that Cody had been, quote, exposed to the specific peril of death, they might win, and be able to take legal action against Mickey and Janice. There was precedent for this ruling. In 1984, a hiker from Ohio had gotten lost in Katmai National Park while on vacation in Alaska, and his family took his life insurance company to court to try and close his estate. They won on the grounds that his backpack had been found in a river, and there was a park ranger who came down to testify that if he had fallen in the river, he could not have survived. And even if he had not fallen in the river, he was in a hostile environment without any supplies, and had likely been gone long enough to perish. Going off this same idea, Moore had based his appeal on, quote, Cody's potential exposure to the cold weather on March 11, 1997. His extreme vulnerability as a lost 3-year-old on the south side of Columbus, and the inference that he had lived in an abusive home environment. However, the court reviewed the transcript from August and said that there was not any tangible evidence to suggest that Cody had been exposed to extreme danger. In the case of the missing hiker that they had tried to use as precedent, his backpack had been found. In order for Cody's case to have similar evidence, they would need to have either found something of his in the area or have a witness who had seen him talking to a suspicious person. The fact that he was not properly dressed for the weather and that Janice had a history of abuse were not enough evidence. The previous judgment was affirmed. In 2004, Mickey Stepp passed away, and she had maintained her innocence and her mother's innocence until she died. On March 11th of 2007, the Columbus Dispatch ran a 10-year piece about Cody's case. They interviewed Jim McCoskey, who still keeps a box of evidence about the case, and he adds to it if any new leads ever come in. When asked about what he thought happened to Cody, McCoskey said, quote, "Cody could have been given away. He could have literally been sold. Do I definitely know? Is he dead? No, I don't." McCoskey had gotten a few leads over the years, oftentimes in response to sightings that match a new age progression picture of Cody, but none have panned out. Although the initial, more optimistic theory that perhaps Mickey had given Cody away to someone to raise him in order to hide him from Robin, as she viewed her as an unfit mother, McCoskey doesn't really find this plausible anymore. He told the Dispatch that he would guess, quote, "he's dead or he was sold into a culture like a pornography culture." On September 17th of 2008, police responded to a tip about Cody's body being buried in a field off of Parsons Avenue, near where Cody had been staying with Mickey. They had unspecified reasons to believe that the tip could be reliable and set up a tent to work from. Police had a cadaver dog search the field, and he found 4 areas of interest. Police dug about an inch of dirt away at a time from all areas, but the dogs only continued to alert on one of the spots after the surface dirt was removed. They dug fairly deep with a backhoe in this spot, but unfortunately did not find anything except some buried trash. Police had apparently known about the field since March, but had to wait until the rainfall stopped enough to excavate the area, as it was a swamp. Police didn't rule out the possibility of returning for another search, but eventually they stopped for the day. Robin observed the search and told reporters that she is not ready to believe her son is dead. She said, quote, "I believe he's alive and waiting to come home." On December 24th of 2007, a user by the name of Linda Fox posted about an in-depth sighting she believed she'd had of Cody. The comment was in response to a blog post about the case and began with the sentence, quote, "I have reason to believe Cody is alive and living near or in Lebanon, Ohio. I picked up a small boy who looked to be around 9 on December 12th on my way home from choir practice. He was about 3 miles east of Lebanon, walking towards Lebanon. She then went on to describe that Cody seemed tired from walking for a long time, and he told her he was meeting a friend, or possibly a cousin, named Jeremy at the nearby McDonald's. He had been walking in the rain, and he was wearing a coat that seemed to be too big for him. On the way there, they talked, and he told Linda that he was 13 and being homeschooled. His friend never showed up, so Linda bought him some food, and they talked for a bit before she offered to drive him home. He couldn't tell her his address or even the street, but he said he would know how to get there. When she asked who he was living with, he told her he stayed with his Aunt Donna, but he didn't know what her last name was. He said that his was Irwin. They drove around for over half an hour, with Cody being unable to pinpoint exactly where he lived. Linda decided to take him to the police station because the whole thing seemed odd, and she wanted to get him help. She stressed that he wasn't in trouble, but when she went in to talk to the police officers, Cody fled. She told them he couldn't be far, but they were unable to locate him that night. After this encounter, Linda searched for missing children from Ohio to see if perhaps he was a runaway, and someone was looking for him. She noticed that he matched the age-progressed picture of Cody Stepp very closely, the same blonde hair and blue eyes. But beyond that, Cody had an unusually shaped left ear with almost a notch at the top. The Cody she'd met had the same slightly odd left ear. After this, Linda took the trash that was in her car from the night before, the spoon and cup that Cody had eaten ice cream out of, and put them in a plastic bag. She brought them to the police station along with Cody's missing poster. They assured her they would check for DNA and fingerprints, but said that they had reason to believe that the boy was likely just a local runaway. She called the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children as well as the Columbus Police, but doesn't know if anything ever came of the lead. This account is certainly interesting, and if it's true, Cody's slightly oddly shaped left ear would be a good way to identify him. But it's a comment on a blog, and this report does not appear in any newspaper sources that we could find. However, since the child vanished, it is of course within the realm of possibility it could have been him. And because this case is so sparsely reported on, her sighting would not necessarily have made the news. In 2012, investigators found a teenager in Kentucky whose full name was Aaron Cody Stepp. He was in the state where Robin thought he may have been taken to, and he even closely matched the age progression pictures of Cody. However, when investigators went to test his DNA, they found he was not a match. The case went cold again, briefly making the papers for the 15-year anniversary in 2013, but there was not any new information to discuss. On September 1st, 2014, Columbus Monthly ran an article checking in with the most high-profile cases in the state. A majority of the piece was spent discussing the Brian Schaefer case, arguably the most famous case in Columbus. But near the end, they talked with Robin. She said she thinks about Cody every day, and remembered his chubby cheeks and how full of energy he always was. Robin has been clean for 4 years at this point, and was cautiously optimistic that they might still find her son. For most of the case, Jim McCoskey thought Cody was likely deceased, and that Mickey and Janice had something to do with it. But the two had both since passed away, and anything they might have known likely died with them. McCoskey has since retired, and Detective Robin Tucker has taken over the case. Tucker had a slightly more optimistic view, leaning toward Robin Stepp's theory that Cody had been given away to family in either West Virginia or Kentucky. As of the time the article was written, detectives thought they had a promising new lead. Robin said, quote, "I hope it'll be my son we find this time. I just want him found and brought home. It's been too many years." 2 more years passed, and in 2016, ABC followed up with Robin on the 19-year anniversary of Cody's disappearance. She stands by her theory that Mickey and Janice were responsible, saying, quote, "I believe that they sold him, or gave him away, or did something with him." Pamela Taylor, whose son had picked Robin up the day she got out of prison, had stayed Robin's friend throughout the years. She told ABC that she was hopeful that one day Robin could be reunited with her son, saying, quote, "There's no closure, there never will be until that day that we see him, and I hope it's here on Earth." There is very little information on Cody's case. At one point, a discussion board on Project Jason, a website about missing children, was up, and there were disturbing allegations made against Janice. However, the only source for this is a screenshot of the conversation on Reddit. The Project Jason website no longer exists, and the pages have not been archived. The allegations claim that Janice raised her children in a matriarchal society and claimed that boys were not important, favoring the girls over them. She also allegedly pimped out her daughters starting at the age of 12. These allegations cannot be substantiated, but on the few write-ups and discussions that exist online, the same allegations are often mentioned to add more credence to the theory that Janice mistreated Cody. References to these allegations can be found in that same blog post from 2007, with the citing provided by Linda Fox, and may have possibly stemmed from information provided in the America's Most Wanted episode about Cody. An attempt to track down this episode was unsuccessful. However, we did find a discussion board where one Reddit user contacted Michael Linder, the creator of the show, to ask about getting a hold of old episodes. He responded with, quote, "So sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but all episodes of America's Most Wanted have escaped, their whereabouts unknown, after serving a 23-year sentence on Fox, which claims to have no idea where the masters are stored, or if they've been stored. Over the years, I've tried to locate them with no success, as have many others, including attorneys from the Exoneration Project, who hope specific episodes might assist in righting wrongful convictions. As you've probably discovered, a few bad dubs can be found on YouTube. That's all that remains. The show does not stream, and collections of dubs have not been saved by the FBI or any law enforcement institution. It cannot be purchased. You can bang on Fox's door, but many others have tried, without success. Because of this, one of the few credible sources that may have further information about this case is not available, and the masters have probably been deleted. Our show filed a records request with the Franklin County Probate Court to try to obtain a transcript of the August 24th hearing, where many of the allegations against Mickey and Janice were recorded, but they do not have the recording on file. The court documents about the case do not contain any new information, so the only source that we were able to find that contained anything about the 4-hour testimony was a short dispatch article spotlighting the more sensational evidence. National newspapers outside of Ohio didn't really pick up the case, and Cody's case remains unsolved with very little media attention. Robin Stepp holds out hope that her son could be alive, but because the case hasn't seen media attention in years, not nearly enough people are keeping an eye out for Cody. If he is alive, Aaron Cody Stepp would be 27 today, and may not remember his old family. Perhaps Detective McCoskey is right, and Cody perished shortly after he vanished, whether that was in 1996 or in March of 1997. Or maybe Robin is right, and somewhere out there in West Virginia, or maybe Kentucky, or even Lebanon, Ohio, there's a young man who has no idea that he is actually Aaron Cody Stepp, a missing boy from Columbus, Ohio. If you have any information about Cody Stepp, please call the Columbus Police at 614-645-4670. Music is provided by Hexsystem. The major source for this episode was the Columbus Dispatch. This episode is sponsored by Harvard Wisdom, a new publication by Sunha Paul Kim sharing the collective wisdom of over 170 Harvard graduates. For a full list of sources, as well as links to our contributors and sponsors, see our show notes. Please rate or review on your chosen app and follow us on Twitter or Instagram for our latest episodes and news. See you in 2 weeks.